All right, I've just started recording. Give me just a brief second to get situated. Open recent. Okay. Sorry for my tardiness. I just got through a hardcore session of Lego building with my kid. It's his birthday today, and he got a birthday cake Lego set. So 140 pieces. So we were able to just barely finish it in time, 2 minutes beforehand. Now he's downstairs obsessing over the cupcakes that we're currently making, because apparently he wants his cakes as cupcakes. And honestly, I like that. Handheld cakes, you know. So with that, we have a lot to get through today. Let's see. So I'm just waiting for people to join because we had that. But the first thing I want to do is I'm going to show you all the 100% solution. But once I show it to you, you can't submit anything with the 100% solution anymore. I won't accept it because I'll just say, you got that from me. Didn't really work on it. It's also going to be very annoying to you because you're going to see that it's very short. Now, I mentioned that it requires a complete paradigm shift in the way you're thinking. And the way you do it is you got to cheat. You got to cheat to win in this. Not in the cheat kind of, oh, I'm going to look up the answer, but in the kind of the rabbit needs to kind of look at the entire game and go, I don't like this game. There's a chance of me getting eaten. Is there any way I can rig this game? Okay. So there's 2 ways that the rabbit can completely rig the game. Okay. So method number 1 of the way the rabbit rigs the game. Method number 1 is involves looking at what we have access to in animal. And it's all about inheritance, okay, and encapsulation, right? I am an animal. What variables do I have access to in animal? And it turns out there are 2 variables that should really be private. These should really be private, but they are not private. These 2 variables say, do not modify. And honestly, when I see something like that, I kind of want to modify them. Don't you? Let's go ahead and go this dot row. Now, mind you, so this, by the way, private means nobody but me has access to it. Public means everybody can have access to it. And the default modifier, which is what happens if you don't put in private or public, means that anybody in this package, any of us, any of this code that I have up, anybody can modify it. So I'm just going to go this dot row is equal to -1. This dot row, this dot column is equal to -1. And I'm just going to go out of bounds. And that runs and I escape 100% of the time because the fox can't get to me because I am literally off of the playing field. Now, some of you may like, that's too easy, or I thought about doing that, but I didn't think you'd accept it. Well, you should have asked. You should definitely ask. Okay. So you should definitely ask. There. So, but this is if you want. So again, getting 100% only, it requires you to really just kind of do that. Yep, that's the other way to do it. That is my preferred way to do that. The other way to do that is notice that that we get access to this model class. Give me a second. I accidentally closed the rabbit. We have access to this model class. Now we have access to the capital M model pretty easily. This is the class with the class variables and stuff, but it's also the logical model that holds like a specific instance of the model has all the data in it. And some of those things are private, like how big, what this field is. So I can't just arbitrarily put things like the fox somewhere else. And I can't do that even if I had access to it. And I don't have access to it in the decide move method because this dot model, right, will say, hey, it's private access in animal, right? Animal has a private access to the model. But how do you instantiate with that model? Well, you pass it in through the constructor. And when here in the constructor, it's exposed. Encapsulation. Now, this is always important to think about, like what variables have exposure where. If you don't think about that kind of stuff, if you don't think about this kind of stuff, okay, now you may think this is glib and me just kind of mocking you. Or it's more of a troll. I'm not mocking, I'm trolling. Okay, but this has an important lesson. Okay, if you don't think about how things are going to be used and how things can be used to break things, then some kid on a Minecraft server is going to realize that that the logging software that the Minecraft server is using can be used to run arbitrary code so that he can kick people from the game automatically or do some nasty stuff. And then, well, the thing is that grown-ups play Minecraft too. It's a very fun game. And one of those grown-ups is going to eventually notice, wait a second, that software for logging is used everywhere on pretty much every server. And that's how things like the log4j exploit have to get madly patched over the week, over the end of the year. It doesn't work anymore. Log4j has been patched. So, log4j. So, but that seriously, the log4j happened because people were kidding around in a Minecraft server. And somebody noticed the exploit in log4j. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I don't have time to go into it and haven't had the time to look at it. It's literal. And I have some friends who's literally had to be on the receiving end of that, and not Minecraft, but in the, oh God, we have to patch this right now kind of thing. So you got to think about where things are exposed. Start thinking like that. Okay. And if you're not sure if you're allowed to do something, ask me. Okay. So anyway, we have exposure to the model here. And so let's go ahead and see if there's anything in the model we can modify. Model.game is over is equal to, let's say true. So we run it, we build the rabbit, we set the game is equal to true is over, and boom, we are done. Remember, the only winning move the rabbit has is not to play. These are literally the only ways you can get 100%, by the way. I did give credit for people who had who thought about this and did ask me if they could modify it. I tried to be very specific in my wording that as long as the code is in Rabbit, you can do it. And this isn't, how to say, this isn't so much smart as it is trolling and cunning. And those are hard to develop because nobody really likes to. How in the world do you develop cunning, right, as an attribute, right? We can build up your problem solving skills, okay, but how in the world do you figure out exploits? And the answer is by exposing you to exploits like that. But this is one of those minor ones. So I'm not doing it to be mean or to make you feel bad or stupid or anything like that. Your solutions were all very awesome. I really liked seeing your solutions for the Rabbit program because they actually worked and did stuff. And, if I actually patched this code, it wouldn't really matter. But, the stuff I had here wouldn't matter anymore. I would certainly want to make game is over. I probably would want to make that private. The same with the same with Rabbit is alive, although that creates other problems apparently in the controller. But those are other, you want to try to limit these kind of issues. Or at the very least, you know, with the model, make it so the animal doesn't depend on having to have the entire logical model. The animal shouldn't have to have that. The animal should be able to figure out all that stuff without having to rely on the model. But anyway, hopefully you're all amused / slightly frustrated on that. I'd go into more detail about this, except we have we didn't have stuff we don't have stuff this week. Sorry, we didn't have a Monday. So I'm going to be, and so I definitely want to, slightly doesn't even describe it. Oh, I feel so bad, but also so, anyway, that's the one, that is the 100% solution.
How many students have got that to this point?
I think we had 4 this semester, so that brings it up to a total of 6.
Nice.
And that was mainly because one student in a room mentioned something, and the other, and that basically gave a few other students the idea of what to do. So, but yeah, it was perfect. So yeah, it was totally the, yeah, but anyway, it's an interesting exploit. And I just want you to keep in mind, always be on the lookout for exploits and stuff. Just always be on the lookout. And if you do discover it, you should totally, you know, not actually exploit the stuff if it's in a real program, and like notify the persons of the exploit. Multiple companies like Google have bug bounties. Like if you discover a bug, they will pay money so that in lieu of you releasing that bug into the wild. All right. But also, like if you discover a bug, and that gets into a tricky situation, because, you know, like governments, like some state governments will decide, oh, you looked at the HTML source code and realized that there was that we were leaving a bunch of public information out of there. Ah, that's quote unquote hacking. So yeah, just be aware that unless you're very familiar with this stuff's going on, sometimes it's better to leave sleeping dogs lie, and maybe just document it anonymously sometimes. But yeah, I'm not sure about that at all. That wasn't me even. So just news story. So let's go ahead and talk about the latest project. Okay. So let me go ahead and erase what we have here. What I just did in the morning class, and so that I can redo it here. So hopefully you've had the chance to look at my videos. And if you've not, you should, because the videos are typically required for doing these. Okay. And hopefully you've had a chance to at least look at it through, you know, hopefully you've had the chance to look at it through what, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I'm trying to do too many things at once. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it at lab. Did you guys get started during lab, by the way? I'm about to get a phone call. It's 2-factor authentication. I'm not like interrupting class to take a phone call. Do you guys get started on the lab during your yesterday's lab?
The Arraylist lab?
Yes.
Define getting started.
Did you at least read the document?
Yes.
Was any code written at any point?
For me personally, no. I started like watching all the videos.
Cool. That's fine. I understand if people need more time on it, please let me know. But know that module 2 and module 3, they're kind of interconnected. So you want to get you need to get module 2 done to get the end of module 3 done. Because in module 3, what I'm going to ask you is to please give me the big O runtimes of the things you wrote for module 2. So, Arraylist exercises. Here we go. So what we're going to do here is that we have 6 problems, and I'm going to briefly talk about them in turn. So I know this generics thing is new. Watch the videos on it. I do my best to explain it, but the idea here is that we want a list of specific things, right? And it's an extremely useful thing because, well, I'll show you in the videos. It allows you to make, it prevents you from making errors. It allows you to make assumptions about the things you're doing. So read this page and watch the videos on generics if you haven't. But basically it allows you, and what that allows you to do if you're complete, if this term is completely new to you, which it probably is, because I know Professor Fiore doesn't cover it in 1068. What this does, it allows you to make lists of a specific type. So you can, so lists of integers, list of strings, so you don't accidentally add things to it, but you can also assume that what you've stored in it is a specific type of object. So there's 6 methods. This one, 2.4, we will cover at the end of class. I will give you the answer to it at the end of class. Okay, so think about it, but if you don't, I'll give it to you at the end of class. 2.1 to 2.3, these are the kind of questions that you would be able to do with an array, right? They're not that exotic. These are the kind of questions you'd be dealing with an array instead of a list. So no new knowledge there. Same with string to list of words. Okay, and remove all instances. That's the only one that requires you to know how a array list works. Please test it on these examples. 1, 4, 5, 6, 5, 5, 2. Try removing all the 5s with your method. Okay. Because a lot of people will write their code and they'll test it and output will not be 1, 4, 6, 2. Right. We want to remove all 5s. Instead, they'll get 1, 4, 6, 5, 2. Okay. So, yep. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So now that we have generics, what does that mean for the way our methods run? Okay. So the way this means for our methods is that for testing if something is unique, we write it like this: public static Boolean unique list of e's, right? So we can write it just like this and you won't get an error and you'll get no errors whatsoever, but you will get these annoying warnings that says, hey, raw use of parameterized class list, which is so weird. But what it's saying is that you're not using generics. You're saying we have no type, we have no idea what these things are going to be. So it's just, we have to assume it's a list of objects, which is the least useful thing. So list of e's, this gives an error. So the way you would read, let me go down to this other one where we fix this. Over here, we have this all multiples class, okay? Which says, hey, given, actually, boom, there we go. That's much better. Public static list all multiples list. Okay. So what does this mean? Well, all multiples, we're looking for all right. It takes in a integer. It's looking for, right? It's basically asking, hey, create a new list out of this list, create an answer list out of this list where the answer is all numbers that are multiples of X from my original list, right? Again, you can look at the, I'll just share my screen, right? We can look at this original problem, right? So here, if we do provide this number and provide 5, then this is our output, which are all the multiples of 5 from this list. Okay. And so we know this is a list of integers. So now the useful thing about this is that since we know this is a list of integers, I can do things like if I were to, I can do like list dot get and get, I could get any number. Let's go with 3, get index 3. And then I can do mathematical operations on it like modulo, right? So I could ask a question like, hey, if list get 3x is equal to 0, right? If it's divisible by that, right? But if I don't use the generics, then then I'll get an error saying, hey, you can't do that because you can't do modulo on objects. We don't know what type this is. You didn't specify what type it is. So it's a list of objects. We're going to assume it's a list of objects, so we're going to restrict you to all the operations. That makes sense to everybody? So by saying, hey, this list you're taking in list, it's a list, and you read this of integers, a list of integers, we can assume it's an integer and use all the operations that come with it. It's pretty useful. Makes, if you didn't use that, you'd have to be casting every step of the way like this. You'd have to be casting, and that gets really tiresome really quickly. Okay. So yes.
For unique, is it any type of list, or should it just be able to handle any?
It should be able to handle any type of list. And the way that works, which is what my next point was, is list of E, meaning that I don't really care what it is so long as they're all the same type, right? So long as you tell me it's a list of something, that's fine. Everything okay? Okay. Gotcha. And then, but this comes up and says, hey, what is an E? In here, it's a list of integers. I know what a list of integers is. That's fine. But here it's saying, we don't know what an E is. So it causes an error. So the way we fix that is that there's a new terminology we can use right over here. And notice that it changed the color. Over here it was black. Over here it's green. It's saying it's saying public static E is a generic type. If you pass in a list of strings, all the E's in this method are going to be replaced by string. If you passed in an int, all the E's in this method will be replaced by an int, well, integer. If you pass in an integer, all of them will be replaced by an integer. If you pass in a capital D double, all the E's in this method, like E temp, would be replaced by a double. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So now the one thing that you want to avoid is that you only use this type when you don't know what the E is going to be. If you know what the type is going to be, don't do this. Right? Because if you do this, notice it turned green. It's saying, integer is your generic type. That means that anytime, if you pass in a list of integers, we'll replace all the integers with integer. If you pass in a string, we'll replace all the integer with string. That's exactly what you wanted, right? So remember, computer's an evil genie. Okay. I'll go into this one later, is permutation 2. For is permutation, right? You've got 2 lists, which each take an E. And then the last thing is for the remove all instances method, right? That's going to return void, meaning that this list is going to get modified. You're not returning a new list. You're modifying the original list, right? And what you're doing with this is that you're removing all instances of this item from this list. All instances of this item gets removed from this list. Make sense? Now for this one, there's about 4 different solutions about 3 common solutions that students come up with, and then maybe like 1 or 2 uncommon solutions. So this is one I'll ask you about, and typically I'll ask you, hey, so any idea how we can solve it a different way? So, all right. So any more questions before we continue? Because what I'll do is I'll split you into breakout rooms. and then I'll come and see what kind of help you need. And then my plan is I will come and just checking in the rooms and help you get started on questions or answer the questions. I really mean this, there are no stupid questions at this point. Please. No, I'm sorry. There are a few stupid questions, such as what is Java? So, you know, I'll think you're really in trouble if you ask that question. But questions like, okay, why can't I just use a list of int? Perfectly valid question. Why can't how do I get started? Perfectly valid. I have no idea what to do. Not a question, but a perfectly valid concern. So again, these are things you're literally paying tuition for me to help you with. So feel free for me to take advantage of that. So I'm going to create rooms. Why do I have no idea what to do? Because you are in a 2000 level programming class, and that feeling is going to persist until till some point before you graduate, or possibly after.
It goes away.
Sorry?
It goes away.
It took me a while, yes.
So there's a light at the end of this tunnel.
There is light at the end of the tunnel there. So yes, it does go away. It just takes a while to get over imposter syndrome. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create those rooms. And I'll go ahead and pause the recording. All right. I'm going to run this. So let's see, I'm just waiting for people to rejoin. Okay, because now I want to show you how to do this one. So let's close that window so I don't accidentally show anybody's grades and inadvertently violate FERPA. Always a giant concern. All right. Honestly, it's grown on me, the wallpaper. It really has. Like at this point, it's like an anti-choice. Like, I have to make a conscious, it used to be default, but it's so old now that that selecting it is a conscious statement.
You just grew attached to it at this point.
I also like that it's in the ultra wide, that somebody went and made sure that there was an ultra wide version. Okay, so we're going to solve this two ways. Okay, so is permutation, it's a mess. Okay, so what is a permutation to begin with? It's an anagram. Okay, it's like words that can be so you're going to see it's words that can be arranged into different words, but more abstract, like for instance, AAB and AAB and ABA and BAA are all permutations of each other, right? Because they're all made up of the same letters, just arranged in a different order. 2 A's and a single B, right? A more easy to remember example is that wolf and flow, which I love, it's the same word, just rotated, or reversed, but these are permutations of each other. What we have to look out for is a case like this. So 1 1 2 and 2 1 2. Those are not permutations of each other. They both have ones, they both have twos, they're both 3 long, okay, but they're not permutations of each other, because they don't have the same number of ones and the same number of twos. It has 2 1s and 1 2 versus 1 1 and 2 2s. Always silly to say those like that, but anyway. So we want to make sure that these things are permutations of each other. So what that means is that to check if they're permutations of each other, well, let's go ahead and just simplify the very first kind of thing we can figure out, which is, of course, that is if a dot size, and by the way, the reason I'm capitalizing them, even though that's stylistically incorrect, is because I want, when I do some copy pasting, it's easier for me. So it's a deliberate choice on my part. Another anti-choice. If a dot size is not equal to b dot size, so if the sizes are not equal, they cannot be palindromes of each other, right? It is literally impossible for them to have the same letters and the same numbers of letters. Make sense? Everybody got that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So now what do we need to do? Well, since we know they're the same size, we can go through every item in A and count it. Okay. And simply put, if every item in A appears the exact same number of times in A and the exact same number of times in B, then that's good. But if there's a mismatch, that's bad. Now, if we were in Python, we'd be using dictionaries, which in Java are hash maps, but we haven't gotten to hash maps yet because that's its own thing. And we're going to really dive into how they actually work much later in the semester. So right now we're just dealing with lists. So if you know how to use hash maps, this is a direct implementation of hash maps, and using hash maps is the most efficient solution. But we don't know how to do that, and time efficient. Coding efficient, it certainly takes just about as long as what I do. But let's revise what I just review what I said. For every item in A, count the number of times it occurs in A, count the number of times it occurs in B. So that actually gives us a for loop you may not have seen before, a very painful looking one, which is for, and I'm going to do this in a for each loop, which is the same as a the same as a Python for loop. For each, and I love how concise this is. Check out the very last video of module 1 if you are unfamiliar with this. For each item in A, we read the colon as in. For each item in A, we're going to do a for loop, and I'm going to do the regular for loop for each of these. For I, what we need is two variables. For every item in A, I want to count the number of times it occurs in A. And of course, I'm working in Java, so that means I have to declare it. Teaching in two languages does have its disadvantages. All right. So count A, count B. Yeah, you will come up with a lot of accidental misspellings. Sorry about it. Just be an adult about it. I'm sorry. A dot size. All right, A dot size. So int count A, int count B. So for int I is equal to 0, I is less than A, this is what we want. So for every index, if A dot get I dot equals the item, right? Count A plus plus. All right. Makes sense. So what we do is for every item in A, I count the number of times it occurs in A. And now I'm just going to copy paste. And because I can easily pick out where all the A's are, I can replace them. Count B. Okay. Plus plus. And now now that I've counted them in A, counted them in B, for, let's see. And now if count A is not equal to count B, return false. Right? If those counts don't match, the code took a bit of time to do this. but it's pretty cool. Let me go ahead and drop it in chat for you, so you have it as a reference. While I use my last 3 minutes to say, well, is there another way to do this? Okay. And suppose you get the idea of, wait a second, all of these, if I just simply sort these, all of these sort to AAB. Similarly, if I sort Wolf, it becomes Flow. If I sort Flow, it becomes Flow. If I sort if I sort this, it becomes 1, 2, 2. So if I just sort my permutations, that's a solution. Okay. So then you might get the idea. Okay, I'm going to go on to Stack Overflow and quickly Google how to sort list in Java, right? And you go on to Stack Overflow, as you should. That's a valid question to ask Stack Overflow and a perfectly good use case. And, and just drop in your citation right here. But basically, Stack Overflow informs you, hey, what you want to do is use collections.sort. So collections.sort A, collections.sort B, return A dot equals D. Oh, wait, we don't end at 3:15. Thought we ended at 3:15, so I was rushing. Oh boy. Okay, plenty of time, which is good. Okay. So before I'm moving on to this answer, everybody understood this answer, right? Okay. So we've got, and people are still hearing me. I'm not just screaming into a void, right?
Yes.
So if item count A, I don't know if it would be the same. I'll have to check that myself later. It's a bit hard to see in the chat box. So for public, so over here, we tried sorting them and we see that this is giving us an error and it's a bit tiny to read, but it says required type T, list type E. Okay, so I guess the types matter. Actually, that name, replacing it with T versus E, it doesn't actually matter, which leads to confusion because it says list type T, provided T. No instance of T exists. T conforms to, and then there's some gibberish over here that says comparable question mark super T. What in the world? So, okay. Yeah, I might recommend that you can change it into IntelliJ. Like, right, it has a recommendation to use an enhanced for loop. And that's perfectly fine to do. You can do it like that. It makes it shorter, but I just wanted to keep these distinct and not overwhelm you with too many for each loops. Okay, so anyway, what's going on here? So trick you can do in both Eclipse and IntelliJ. Hold down Control or Command on a Mac and click on a method, and it will bring you to that method, even if it's in a different class. So here we are in collections.java. Oh my gosh, we are in the actual Java source code. And don't worry, you can't mess it up. See, it popped up saying that file is read-only, is only read-only. And we see that sorting a list using the collections class. What is collections, by the way? A collection is basically everything we're learning about. Pretty much anywhere where we're gathering and where we have an object and holding a bunch of things, that's a collection. One object that holds a bunch of other items. That's a collection. So collections is the class with all these sorts of very useful stuff. So collections dots sort takes in a list of T's and it sorts it. Okay. But and it calls the list sort method on it. But okay, what is it doing here? It says it requires it to be, it says the T isn't just a blank T, it's T, and then it's got all this other gibberish over here. Extends comparable T. It's a lot of gibberish. But what it's saying here is that we put on a restriction that says that this list of stuff is only able to, we're only able to sort stuff that's comparable to one another. That's the restriction here. Comparable is this type, and you can put type restrictions on. So I'm going to put in the answer over here that you can see it clears it up. And what this says is that you can't just put anything into here. You have to put anything in that's a subclass, some kind of subclass. It could be all the way down to a giant inheritance chain, some kind of descendant of the comparable class. And this just simply means that it's comparable to other things of itself. So T that are comparable to other T's. What is comparable? It's an interface. And you can read the documentation, but all it is just comparables are things that have a method that are called compare to. And we'll learn more about that later. But what compare to does is that returns a -1 if if they're out of order. They're -1 if they're in order, a 0 if they're, well, it returns -0 or 1 to indicate whether something is bigger, smaller, comes after or before, or if they're equal. In other words, it allows you to get a ordering of things. Technically, it is what kind of ordering? A natural ordering, a total ordering. In other words, everything that can be ordered can be ordered in a specific way, such that it's bigger than some things and smaller than other things. So strings are comparable because you can put them in alphabetical order. Numbers are comparable, both integers and doubles, because you can put them in numeric order. Scanners are not comparable. I don't know how you'd put them in order. Same with tacos. They're not exact. I mean, how would you order your tacos? Size, tastiness, right? You'd have to have implemented a compare to for them. Okay, in order for us to check tacos against each other. I might be in the mood for tacos. Right. So, but now that we've restricted this type to things that can actually be sorted, because that's the big feature of comparables. If you can compare them, you can sort them. Then you can do this. Now, I wasn't expecting this, but it's such a common solution that students try to do that I felt compelled to show it. This is more the correct solution of what I expect you to do, but this is kind of going outside the box. And it is a shorter amount of code. So you can do either one of these as your answer. Just be aware that for either of these, whichever one you choose, that's going to be one of the ones you have to analyze the runtime of for your third one. Oh, that is an excellent question. Jian Zhang. Is that it?
It's close.
Sorry, I really do try.
I know.
Comparable is an interface. Shouldn't the syntax become T implements comparable? And it would be in any other context, but for generics, for some reason, it extends because they only want you to be descended from one thing in generics. It's just the quirk of generics and how it works. I don't know why the design choice was that. I don't think I've ever had a student ask that, by the way, but good thinking there. It's just for this syntax for generics, it extends. All right, so it is 3:20. So class is dismissed. If you need more time to work on this, please let me know.